Hello and welcome to another video and podcast from Fantasy Football Scout. My name is David and today we're going to have a look at the Fantasy Football Scout Scout Picks bus team for Game Week 3. Now the Scout Picks, as many of you will know if you follow Fantasy Football Scout on the website, is the team that the editorial team put together as the best team to take into any given game week to help you work out whether or not you've got the right players in your team for that particular round of fixtures. It's a one shot. It's very much like a free hit team for each week, and so it's never necessarily put in front of you to say you have to make sure you have all of these players, but it's always a good guide to make sure that your team is looking in good shape. So if you've got maybe 7 or 8 of these players, you can feel very confident going into a game week. And of course, if you are playing the free hit, then usually the Scout Picks team is the way to go. It's one that is decided, of course, by the editorial team. So that's Neil, Mark, and Tom, who work very, very closely with a lot of the data, and they watch every single match as well, in whichever way they can. And so they're very reliable set of people to make these decisions. And every single week what they do is they put out the bus team, which of course is a phrase that was coined by the Always Cheating podcast. It's the version of your FPL team that you set after the deadline's gone, just in case you get hit by a bus, hence the term bus team. And so it's what the team is looking like at the moment. It could be subject to change on Friday. And so before we get into what the Scout Picks bus team is for Game Week 3, this is, of course, a call out to make sure that you keep an eye either on social media or on the Fantasy Football Scout website on Friday for any changes to this team based around perhaps maybe a 50-50 call that went a different way, some updates from the team news, or just general injury updates that we get from around the league between now and that deadline. So make sure you stay tuned to get the final team when it drops. Before we move on to the actual team itself, a lot of the data that comes into the thinking for this team comes from the Fantasy Football Scout members area, so make sure you get your membership sorted for the Game Week 3 deadline. It will definitely be of great help to you. But let's jump into the Scout Picks bus team for Game Week 3 then, and of course it is very much based around the fixtures. And so what we've got on the left-hand side for the benefit of the podcast listeners is the Fantasy Football Scout season ticker with just a focus on Game Week 3, sorted by difficulty, and right at the bottom we've got Sheffield United, Fulham, Liverpool, Nottingham Forest and Newcastle, and because of those guys being down the bottom end, we haven't got any picks from those teams. But according to the Fantasy Football Scout season ticker, the teams with the most kind fixtures are Chelsea, Man United, Everton, Man City, Aston Villa and Arsenal. So they're the teams that are going to be drawn on quite heavily here. Chelsea have got Luton at home, Man United are hosting Nottingham Forest, Everton host Wolves, Man City are away at Sheffield United, Aston Villa are away at Burnley, and Arsenal host Fulham. So they're the teams with the best fixtures. And so what we've got here in this team is it's broken down into 3 different categories, which is players who are almost certainly going to be in that Scout Picks team when it is eventually announced, those that are in contention, and so there could be some chops and changes in that category, and of course the long shots, which is just anybody who has a slight possibility they might end up on the bench, that kind of thing, and we'll just see what happens with those guys. So I'll go through the team in full just to begin with, and what the bus team is looking like right now. We've got Onana in goal, Diaz, Chilwell and Estupiñán as the back 3, Saka and Burmo, Ødegaard and Rashford as the midfield 4, and then Jackson, Haaland, Alvarez as the front 3, with Turner, Saliba, Gusto and Sarr as the substitutes. And so from these guys, who are the ones who are the likely lads, the ones that are almost certainly going in? Well, Pervis Estupiñán, of course, is a very automatic inclusion these days because his attacking stats have been incredible. Brighton hosting West Ham, who have conceded 2 goals in their first 2 games, so no clean sheets yet, so we would largely anticipate more opportunity for Estupiñán to get involved there. Most of us have him now, so in many ways that's not necessarily going to change too many teams, seeing Estupiñán there. Chelsea is a team that we're drawing on quite heavily for Game Week 3, and the 2 Chelsea players that have made it into the very likely section of making this team are Chilwell and Jackson. The thing about Chelsea, it's a bit like watching them last season because they are underperforming against their XG at the moment. So far, they've had an XG of 3.85 across their first 2 matches, but have only found the net twice. That said, they're going up against a Luton team that in their first game in the Premier League, and have only played 1 game, of course, have had a bit of time off with this blank game week. They conceded 27 shots and 6 big chances against Brighton. And so we feel just the law of averages should put Chilwell and Jackson in a position where they can benefit from how obliging Luton's defence are going to be. The final two guys who are in the sort of almost certain category to make the final team, Rashford and Haaland. Haaland feels like a bit of an easy one, so we'll leave him to save everybody's time. But with Rashford, he has underperformed so far, but he's had 6 shots in the box, which is inside the top 3 amongst all players so far. And of course, Nottingham Forest have done quite poorly away from home in their time in the Premier League. And so with that in mind, we would expect Rashford to get something. He is much better at home as well, and so he is almost certainly going to make that final team. Let's move on to those in contention now, where there's some coin tosses and some dice rolls that might decide some of these things. So, for example, with our Arsenal contingent, we've currently got Saka and Ødegaard, and of course Martinelli is arguably in the conversation as well. Now, we would expect Fulham to be quite obliging in this game. They've conceded the joint most big chances in the first 2 matches so far, and there was an even spread across those 2 games as well. So both Everton and then, of course, Brentford have been able to rack up a lot of big chances against them. They've conceded 36 shots as well across those 2 games, and so Saka, Ødegaard, Martinelli all likely to get involved in the returns. We're probably going to have 2 of them. Who the 2 of those 3 will be something that will be confirmed on Friday, so do have an eye on the website and social media to see who we go with. Ødegaard probably is the possible most likely to get in, because of course he stepped up to take that penalty against Palace. There's no guarantee he's going to take the next penalty. Of course, we are going to have to hear from Arteta, but if penalties have now become his, then he of course gets a bit of an edge over the other 2, and it might end up being Saka versus Martinelli for the final spot. Saliba obviously is on the bench at the moment. He's in contention to perhaps come into the starting lineup, but he does have to compete with Diaz and Estupiñán, and we'll talk about those guys in a minute. Other players who are in contention, you'll also notice that Gusto is on the bench. Colwell is in the conversation as well. They could come into the team if we were thinking that we would want to double up on the Chelsea defence. Again, will we go with that? It's hard to say. I mean, Luton did have a couple of chances against Brighton, score from the penalty spot as well. In all likelihood, it's possible that we stick with the other 3, but just do be aware that we could bring a Chelsea defender in. We might also bring in a second Chelsea attacker as well. That's also possible. Raheem Sterling has been name-checked by the decision makers at the editorial team as someone who could come into the team. He looked quite good in Gameweek 2, had some good attacking positions on the right-hand side. His runs into the box asked a lot of questions of West Ham, and of course he would have had an assist if Enzo Fernandez had scored that penalty. So Sterling is also in the conversation. It's worth being aware of that. Returning to Man United, some players who are in contention. We've got Onana in the team at the moment, but Luke Shaw is also in the conversation as well, based around Man United's defence. The stats so far suggest that attacking returns are coming for Fernandez as well, so he could come in as well. Man United have been quite good at home for clean sheets as well, so 12 clean sheets in the last 20 home matches for United, and so that could benefit Onana, Shaw, of course Fernandez as well. So we could maybe invest slightly more heavily in Man United. You will have to wait and see. Ederson, Diaz and Akanji are players that are all around as possible links into the Manchester City defence. We've currently got Diaz in the team, perhaps just for sureness of starts. Alvarez is currently in the team, but Foden could come in as well. They did quite well in Gameweek 2, and they're still only owned 10.8% ownership for Foden, 7.4% for Alvarez. So they are still at the stage where they could be massive differentials for people. As for the long shots, we've got a couple of names who are unlikely to make it, but it's still worth name checking them. Everton, you'll have seen on the season ticker, I've got that Wolves game, so therefore Pickford and Tarkowski could be involved. So if you've got those guys, don't be too concerned. Yes, it's not been a great start for their defence, but they do have this Wolves game and could do well there. And then Rico Henry as well. The Brentford fixture at home to Palace, not an awful one. Arsenal have just kept a clean sheet against them, and Henry has looked very exciting in the opening few game weeks. So that is the state of the scout picks right now. That's the list of players who are either in the bus team right now or might come in, and a couple of reasons why. If you want more information on what we've talked through here, head to the website and you can see all of the detail behind this scout picks bus team. And as I have said multiple times now, if you want the final team and all of the data that has helped fuel that team, do head to Fantasy Football Scout on Friday, the day of the deadline, either via going straight to the website or keep an eye on the social social media channels that you follow Scout on, and you will see that final team, and you can test your team against it. See how many players from the Scout Picks you've got in your side. Well, with that, I will leave you fine, folks, to the rest of your transfer planning, and I will see you next time.